Welcome to the scorching arena of valor and the crucible of courage. This is the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Here, in the inferno of life's greatest challenges, heroes are shaped and legends are born. Every episode is a torchlight of wisdom, casting a glow on the paths walked by those who've braved the flames and emerged stronger. In this furnace of fortitude, we'll explore tales of resilience, bravery, and the unyielding human spirit. Each guest brings their own spark of insight, lighting up the darkness and guiding us through the smoke of adversity. With Fireman Rob at the helm, prepared to delve into conversations that smolder with significance and stories that kindle the soul. It's not just a podcast, it's a beacon for all who seek to rise from the ashes and glow with purpose. So stoke the fires of your curiosity and ready your heart for tales of triumph and transformation. The flames are roaring. The stage is ablaze. Welcome to the Forged in the Fires podcast. Let the journey begin.
All right, welcome back to Forged in the Fires podcast. I'm your host, Fireman Rob. Today we actually have an amazing individual. He is a world-renowned performance psychologist, a New York Times best-selling author. You know, he's a coach, he's a leader. He's kind of been every single place, and he knows what he's talking about when you're talking about mindset, when you're talking about that mental toughness. Jim Loehr, thank you so much for joining me today.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm very excited to connect with you and with your listeners, and hope we can make some really exciting steps forward for anybody listening.
I love it because, you know, I want to go actually way back when you kind of started out your mental toughness journey, I guess you could say, into trying to have people understand when you put the book together, Mental Toughness Training for Sports. You went out there, you shot it out to 19 different like big publishers and got rejected. But then you went to your dad. I want you to tell me that story because I think it's such a powerful story of kind of that beginning of where this mental toughness came from.
Yeah, my father was basically a professional baseball player, and he got hurt in training camp, and he was not able to continue. But he was an avid sportsman, and he has two sons and a daughter, and we were all involved in sport and as deeply as possible. And I had spent about 2 years collecting data on something that I thought would really help us understand the mental side of sports. And basically, when I finished that research, it was all around something I called the ideal performance state. I looked at 22 different sports and asked them what they were feeling when they were performing at that peak moment. And then I took all those words that were most common and created a matrix that contained 12 descriptors and tried to link that to something tangible in the physiology or in the psychological side. And I wrote a book about it. And I submitted it. I called it Mental Toughness Training for Sports. And I was rejected. I submitted it to 19 publishers. And all 19 came back and said, sorry, not interested. And most of them said, we have no idea what mental toughness is.
Obviously, they didn't.
That's the strangest thing. We understand physical strength and toughness, but I don't think there's any market for that whatsoever.
Oh my God.
So I told that to my dad, and he said, I really like the book. I think there's value there. He said, he wasn't a wealthy man, but he said, I'll go ahead and I'll have this published and we'll make some copies and send them around to athletes that he knows and some NGBs and so forth. And let's just see some organizations, what people think of it. So that was, without that, I think it would have probably died. And we got enormous, kind of response from so many people who read the book, and it kind of became an underground book. People were, we were trying to keep up with the demand, and then finally a major publisher picked it up, and then it became an international bestseller, but nobody wanted to touch it.
It kind of shows you just how everything transitions. Like a lot of people, there's a large majority of people that don't understand the little intricacies it takes to be great.
Well, it's just, I guess persistence. And my dad was, I don't know where my career would have gone, because that book launched my career.
That's awesome.
And it just took a lot of, really, for me, very exciting directions. But if he had not really kind of allowed that to take form in some way, I really wonder where my career would have ended up. It was really interesting that my dad stepped in and really created a trajectory that I will always be thankful for.
Well, it kind of, in your mind, when you look at that, kind of like what you were just saying, like where could have it gone? How do you feel like when you said initially, like, hey, this is really important stuff, the mental toughness side of life, the mental toughness side of sports, where does your mind go now? Like, how has it transitioned to people actually realizing it and learning that more, using that to really accentuate their performance on the field and off of the field? How do you feel about that? Kind of being that first person that kind of spurred on that idea.
Well, I'm sure there were others that had similar ideas, and I didn't know anyone who was in private practice, and that was their sole source of income. There were a few people in higher education who were doing stuff in the whole area of mental training, but it was so primitive. But for me, it was very confirming, and it is now, that people recognize this amazing connection between the mind, the body, and the human spirit. And it is, for me, it's just it's the last frontier. How you connect all these, it's a remarkable system, and it's amazingly engineered. And I'm a science guy. My dad was an engineer, and I just love science. And I tried to do it in a way that reflected one foot in the practical world and one foot in the academic world. But at that time, there was no place to go to really get journals or to get real solid information about this connection. So I was, I guess, very lucky to get started. And I'm very, very excited that the field has blossomed now in the way it has. It's very affirming.
And one of the things that I struggle with all the time is mental health, from being a first responder and military and stuff like that. How do you correlate that mental health, being able to have that mental wellness, with this mental toughness side of what you've kind of learned throughout the years, throughout the decades? How does that correlate to somebody's mental health and wellness?
That's probably the central question, Bob, that kind of really surfaced in a very almost accidental way. We at the Human Performance Institute, Dr. Jack Groppel and I started the institute. He has his PhD in bioengineering, and we wanted to set out a science-based approach to high performance and specializing in helping teams and individuals perform to the highest level possible in extreme environments, high stress environments. And we sold the company to Johnson & Johnson in 2008, and then I stayed on another 6 years. But in the transition, we probably had somewhere a database of around 300 to 350,000 people, may have gotten up to 400,000 with Johnson & Johnson.
Wow.
And it's, we had everything from special forces, the military, Navy SEALs, anti-terrorist units from the FBI. We had Blue Angels precision flying team members. We had just about every arena, 17 number ones in the world in their sports, trained there, Olympians.
That's amazing.
of all kinds. And we had a sumo wrestler come spend 6 months with us from Japan. We had world-class chess champions. I mean, it was quite a place. We had an amazing facility, a 9-acre campus, and it was a living laboratory of high performance. But we collect data on everything. When you walk in, we drew blood, did a fairly comprehensive blood chemistry panel. Then we put you in a bod pod. We took your lean body mass, and we had all these tests that we were doing. And then you went on a 90-day mission to test the principles. Yeah. And we tested whether or not you completed the mission in 90 days. And then we looked at it at 180 days. And then we looked at it in 2 years. And to see, we wanted something that actually got traction. And all that data collection led us to perhaps the greatest insight that was out of the blue for me. I got my master's and doctorate in psychology, specializing in mental health, but I never really connected the dots on mental health and mental toughness. And what we finally came to understand, and Johnson & Johnson, that was the reason they became interested in us, is that we developed this equation. It was pretty clear cut that what we were doing in all dimensions, physically, emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually, we were simply getting people healthier. And the healthier people got in all those dimensions, the better they performed in high stress environments. So we realized we were in the health business.
Didn't even know.
Was in the health business, and this put them in the performance business. They wanted their doctors and all their nurses and all their pharmacists to go to another level of performance, and that was the link. But health ignites performance. That was our single biggest takeaway, and I'm almost embarrassed to say it.
That's, I love the aspects that you're talking about. So when you're talking about those 4 different aspects, right? Not everybody can always be refined in those. How does one help the other to come back into alignment?
Well, we are complex creatures. We're not simple. And we developed an energy management system that I think was maybe one of our greatest contributions, because we were both in the science world, and energy is the basis of chemistry and physics. And so we wanted to make the human system somehow connected to the dynamics of energy. And energy is what makes everything happen. And so we wanted to look at where does energy come from in the human system. And all energy comes, every cell except red blood cells have their own energy production plant. It's called the mitochondria. And that it's called the Krebs cycle when that energy is ignited. But the fundamental formula is the union of oxygen and glucose. So oxygen transport, fitness. So we did a lot of work in trying to help people get fitter aerobically, anaerobically. We had nutritionists of all kinds. We tried to get people healthier physically. Right. And then we also know that, we develop first physically, and then we develop emotionally and socially, and then we develop mentally and cognitively, and then we develop, morally and ethically, spiritually, we called it, the spiritual dimension. And if you don't have the energy to drive all of the processes involved in emotional control, emotional regulation, actually in cognitive processes and thinking and storytelling and mindset. And if you don't have the energy or the conviction around the sense of purpose and values, and it took us directly into the character space. And again, ironically, nothing in my training as a psychologist would prepare me for this. But the most important area of health in sustained performance under pressure was the spiritual dimension, which is really the dimension of character. The way in which you treat other people began to surface as the number one predictor of sustained performance. And so we started with purpose, and all the people who came through the Institute, we helped them understand what we call their central purpose for being alive, and then linking it to everything, including having enough energy to complete that mission, which means you got to take care of yourself. You've got to have enough energy to fight your battles. Right. And that all goes into the physical realm. But we were astonished, all of us, to realize that what we were really missing was perhaps the most important component of an extraordinary achiever, an extraordinary person who can go into high-stress venues and survive and maybe thrive, right, was the strength of their character. And we divided into two types of character. One was your moral and ethical character, which is integrity, honesty, you're just the way in which you treat others, the golden rule. Treat others the way you wish to be treated. That, to me, when I went through school, that was philosophy. That wasn't that wasn't mental toughness.
Right.
And the second part we called the performance character, which are all those assets and skills that are, focus, concentration, positivity, all those assets. We identified 25 in each category, and we started teaching those. But the highest priority, you can get to the top of the mountain and walk over dead bodies, treat people badly, cheat. Right. You can do all kinds of things and get to the top. But we found it's very unsatisfying. It's just not something that you almost feel like you've missed something. Huh. So you need 2 gold medals, 3 gold medals.
Right.
And it's never enough. And the reason is that we came to talk about this sense of a hidden scorecard, that our ancestors really relied on one another to survive. They had to kind of come together and bind together, because you were much better off surviving the brutality of nature and everything else, diseases, when you form some kind of tribe or village or unit. And within that unit, you had to trust one another, you had to respect one another, you had to care for one another, you had to find a way to really extend your concern for others in a dynamic way, and that really helped the whole unit to survive. Huh. And so, but today, we've kind of lost that unity with huge nations and 8 billion people on the planet, but we're still social creatures. And this hidden scorecard, if you don't really treat others well, it kind of eats away at you. And we found that this is one of the things that helped us get that right, so that people could, if they didn't achieve, they still felt great about themselves because they got A's on the scorecard that no one sees but them. And it's their ability to really connect in a meaningful way with other people. And if you don't have that in life, no matter how much you achieve, you're not likely going to find fulfillment or deep satisfaction.
That's such a great point, and like that deep satisfaction, and really that I want to jump into decisions, because that really leads to that person. I mean, you had all these amazing kind of level 1 individuals, from military to police to fire, all and then to sport. You talk about that, we make more, 35,000 decisions every day and over 12 million a year. And most people didn't have a clue of how they're making the decisions or why. I want you to kind of dive into that more of because it's such an important thing for somebody to understand. You talked about the purpose. How important is that decision-making process? And you have a great book called Wise Decisions. How important is that decision-making process and understanding that decision-making process to get to that performance level?
So again, great question. it took me a long time. I've written 19 books, and the 18th book was Wise Decisions. I wrote it with Dr. Sheila Olson, who has her PhD in behavioral genetics, a brilliant woman. And we joined together because we both believed that maybe after all I've done and all she did, she got her degree, her PhD from King's College, from the Department of Psychiatry in London. Very, very brilliant woman. And we both came to the same conclusion that decision-making is perhaps the most important asset that we have. It's the unique ability of Homo sapiens to direct its future. And we make all these decisions almost unconsciously all day long. And we spent a lot of time asking people how they're making decisions and how do they decide whether to do something or not do something. And we found that people are very, very unclear. Even parents, we interviewed a lot of parents.
Yeah.
They don't really have an idea of how to teach decision making, and they're not even sure how they make decisions. It's not taught in elementary school. It's not taught in junior high. It's not taught in high school. It's not taught in graduate schools for the most part.
Right.
And most corporate universities, there are a few that teach decision making, but we try to go into it in a very, very dynamic way and try to look at the nuts and bolts of this asset that we can develop, and it's an acquired competency. Because one bad decision as a teenager to drink and drive can tragically change the trajectory of your life for the rest of your life. And so how many decisions we make every year, it's just staggering how many we make. And most people aren't even aware, and they don't know what it is they're referencing when they make those decisions.
Yeah.
And so we brought this process and made it very conscious. And we started with what I call getting home, which is understanding what the real mission of your life is. And getting home is simply ending up at the end of your life where you want to end up. And I refer to sometimes as the tombstone exercise. And we would have thousands of people put on that tombstone what they believe were the absolute best indicators of that their life was successful. Is this really, if this was really representative of them, if this would be the pinnacle of a successful life. And so they could write 6 words or 2 short sentences, but they put a lot of time in trying to come to terms. And it was so interesting. No one put on there, I want to get 4 gold medals, or I won, I made $1 million by the age I was 30, and all these things that we spent so much time getting to. But it was stunning for people. It's almost looked like they were all cheating from each other. They came up with the same things, which takes us
crazy.
back. We are social creatures, and it was they wanted to have lives of integrity, of honesty, caring, a caring mother, an extraordinary mother or father, son or daughter. Those took the priority over almost anything else. And even happiness, their happiness was linked more to what was on the tombstone than anything else.
Wow.
So then once they knew that, that's what we called getting home. How are you going to get home? And then we had to break that down. If you want to be an extraordinary mother or father, what does that mean in a real tangible way? What does an extraordinary mother mean to you? And then how are you going to qualify? You're going to have to earn that, tombstone etching, every day of your life, or it's not going to happen. And we never know how long we're going to live. So you better get busy. So we bring it all the way back to today. So what do I have to do today to earn the right to have that tombstone and to actually represent that maybe I did get home, and that was the most important priority. Wow. So, and then we have to make how many decisions we have to make sure that happens. Every day we have to set that as the priority, and maybe the ultimate reference. How is this going to affect my getting home in life, my integrity, my caring, someone who might want to be as a person of extraordinary kindness or gratefulness or humility or whatever it was. They kept coming up over and over again on the tombstone. And then you have to work backwards. What Stephen Covey got it right. Start with the end in mind. And we should all, in my own life, that's what I'm constantly trying to do, is to reflect, this is an opportunity I have. I'm still alive. I still can make choices. How do I make a choice here that might help me get a little bit closer to this, most important dimension in my life for truly a successful life that will enable me to get home? And so decisions, we need to know what the process is. And we took people through a very deliberate process and asked them to habituate that to the point where, they have a process they go through in any important decision. We make thousands of decisions, most of which are automatic, but so many of them have huge consequences for better or worse. And we don't really think about it. So it's an interesting area. And I really hope we bring some attention to this issue of decision-making. That's the uniqueness of Homo sapiens.
It is such a powerful area of thought. And, even when I'm going to spin this to the next kind of idea that you talk about of the best leaders are the best negotiators. And it's interesting because when you put that into that framework of decisions and being a self-leader, can you talk to me more about that statement? The best leaders are the best negotiators, but at the same point in that statement of being that self-leader and making those decisions.
A leader is a person of influence.
Mm-hmm.
And a leader is someone who is trying to shed light on things during challenging times and maybe help people to make better choices, whatever the arena might be, whether it's in a special forces context of a military deployment, or it could be a surgeon or a nurse in an OR room, or it could be a mother or father trying to decide how they're going to sanction or really stop their son or daughter spending so much time on their iPhones. These are all decisions, and not to make a decision is often, it really is a decision. A leader is someone who kind of brings to light what the consequences of the various options that we have. And rather than just telling people what they should or shouldn't be doing, follow the rules.
Yeah.
We like to have someone who actually articulates, here is the process that I'm going through in my decision making. And, all decisions, I'm trying to get to your core. I'm trying to get you to hear what I'm saying. Yep. You can block me out, but I'm hoping you'll hear what I have to say, and maybe we can come to a better understanding of each other's positions and maybe come up with a better solution. But I'm humble enough to know I don't have it all right. And I'm just going to give you, I respect you enough that I want you to hear me, but I really want to hear what you have to say, and that we're going to try to solve this riddle in the best way possible.
That's powerful.
And that, I think, is, for me, it's like, that's what leadership is. It's like trying to get people to understand the consequences of what is the reality of what we're facing. Here are the options. Here is my feeling, but I'm willing to listen to what you have to say. And I really want to make sure we do this in a values-based, purpose-driven context where at the end of the day, it may have not made everything work the way we wanted, but we are in unison and we're all trying to make this decision work.
I love that. That's like such a powerful message right now. It's so powerful to hear that. Make sure you go to jimloehr.com. It's jim-loehr.com. You can find out he's got more books than Amazon does. And they're all better than that. So you make sure you go there. You can find out how you can book him. You can find out all about his books and about him. I always end my podcast the same way with 3 questions. Are you ready, sir?
I'm ready.
All right. This is going to take you back. If you could go back to your 18-year-old self and give yourself one piece of advice, what would that be? That was only like 5 years ago. I know.
18 years of age, I was a very empty human being. I was just trying to spread my wings. I really feel like, for me, I love to have this. For me, the story of my life centers around sport. Yeah. And I really believe sport is not really about, I played basketball, baseball, played all the sports. It's about really helping you understand how the body and mind work together. How can you become strong? How do you work as a team? So what I would like to have been involved in throughout my whole life, and to help my sons. I have 3 sons and 7 grandchildren. I'm trying to use sport to help them develop into extraordinary human beings. Right. That character is number one always, and that sport is simply a vehicle for helping them grow up and become stronger human beings. I wish I'd have got that message earlier, because I was obsessed with winning. Yeah. It's a different mentality, definitely. Yeah. All right, here's the second question. If you could give people, everybody's going through struggles and challenges in life, if you could give them 2 pieces that they could incorporate into their daily life, two tips or 2 tactics that they can incorporate into their daily life, what would those 2 be? Well, the first one is everything in life is perspective. And if you, perspective is the answer to almost everything. If you can get perspective, we sometimes get lost. There's a horrible thing happening. And if you just widen the lens, you have so many things to be grateful for. Let's say you're in an accident, but nobody got hurt. And, you're going to learn from this, or your son or daughter's going to learn from this. And you widen the lens, and then you narrow it down to what you can learn. And every experience in life, the second recommendation I have is you've got to get better. You've got to keep learning. We love to learn as human beings. You got to keep getting better in some area of your life. So the 2 answers for me are, 1, we've got to get better at perspective. Perspective gives a sense of context to everything that's happening, and it changes how we see things in the moment, for sure, if we get the right perspective. And then we've got to understand that we're fallible. We do make mistakes, and that we've got to get better, and that every day is an opportunity to get stronger or to grow in some way that will enable us to do better and to be better. And so those 2 issues are front and center for me. I love that. Every day is an opportunity. There's your next book. All right. You're booked out. All right, this last one's kind of fun. So if you could have coffee at a firehouse table, so in other words, no questions off the table, all questions will be answered, with 3 people, they can be deceased or alive, who would those 3 be? Let's see, deceased or alive. That's a really interesting question. I love science, so I would love to have an opportunity to, sit down with some of the greatest minds that have ever existed in astrophysics. I mean, I had a chance to meet with Michio Kaku over a lunch. It was the most fascinating thing. But I mean, if I'd love to meet with probably some of which are now past, but I think we have so much to learn about ourselves and about the world we live in and about space and where we're all headed. I think that's a great one. I would love to have an opportunity to understand, I knew Arthur Ashe when he was alive, but I loved his mind. I would love to have a conversation with Arthur Ashe about his understanding, what he went through. It was unbelievable. He ended up getting AIDS from a transfusion, and how he led his life without complaint, and he made such a contribution to the world. He was just an extraordinary human being. He wrote the foreword to my first book.
Oh, wow.
And I just thought the world of him. I'd love to have an opportunity. I didn't realize how powerful a human being he really was, and what a gift he was to our universe. That is one person that I would love to have had more time with and talk about today's world and what his leadership would be today.
Right.
And then, my father has passed for some time. I'd love to have a chance to talk with my father and to kind of get what his perception of the trajectory of my life and of his family, and what recommendations would he have in the world that I now live in and that we live in. He's a very wise man, extraordinarily brilliant man. And he just had a way of seeing things in a very extraordinary way. I'd love to have an opportunity to speak with him about it.
I'm pretty sure that I can state that his perspective of what you have done for this world is pretty good, because he bet on you a long time ago, and look what's happened. So, I'm gonna have to say that he's gonna look at this and go, I knew that was going to happen. Well, Jim, it's been a pleasure to have you on here. Make sure you go to Jim Loehr. That's Jim-Loehr.com. Find out some books, and also have him come speak. I appreciate it, Jim.
Oh, thank you so much, Bob. I appreciate it. You have some great questions, and I love your energy.
Appreciate it. All right, folks, we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Remember, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast. And please share this episode with a friend or family member. To find out more about Fireman Rob, or if you have a question, go to www.firemanrob.com. Until next time, live your life forged in the fires.